Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where every day I learn how technology is transforming our life, business and world. But here is the important part, the human stories behind that too. And today's guest is Gal Marder, and he's Vice President of Global DevOps Acceleration over at a company called JFrog. And he started out as a developer, and now JFrog has recently been listed on NASDAQ too. So I feel there's got to be a big story here, an incredible journey. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to San Francisco so we can speak with Gal about his journey in tech. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Gal. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yes, so thank you first, Neil, for having me. So as you said, my name is Gal Marder. You asked who I am, so to start with, I'm a developer. I started as a developer and as a software architect. And very early in the process, I realized that I'm mostly enthusiastic about taking this process of software development and making it easier and more delightful and more aligned with business. And this took me to end up as a VP of DevOps Acceleration at JFrog. And the mission of my team there is to make sure our customers are actually having a successful DevOps process using JFrog products.
And you've been on an incredible journey. Can I ask that you set the scene and tell me a little bit more about the kind of problems that you're solving for your customers?
Yes. So first of all, yes, you're right. This is what we're going through at JFrog is super exciting, and I have the pleasure of working with the most amazing customers and dealing with the most amazing challenges. And I'll share a few. I think that's what we see in the industry is, DevOps is here for a while already, and it changes the way we develop software. And different companies took it in different directions. And like many good things in software, this started from the engineers, from the developers. And what we see is that many companies and many engineers achieved great things with the changes in the DevOps domain and with streamlining the software development lifecycle and building CI/CD pipes. But the challenges that we face now are actually challenges of maturity and scale. What happened is we see many customers getting into a situation of different islands of automation, we call it, and great things that different teams or different parts of their organization has done. But now they're facing the challenge of somehow unifying that into something that will align the whole organization on one platform, one pipeline that will take them end to end, and it will allow some kind of standardization for these processes to make them both efficient and also create greater value for the developers themselves. So a lot of the challenges that we face right now are around this. People know already what they want to achieve. They know what they need to do. They have some instances of that achievements throughout the organization, but from an end-to-end perspective, from an organization point of view, there are still many challenges of how to consolidate these islands of automations and put them on kind of one central assembly line and still provide the different development teams the flexibility that they need to use the different technologies that they want to use and have slightly variations of different processes that they need in order to become efficient.
And although it is an incredibly exciting space at the moment, I would imagine that there's been a lot of challenges to overcome this year. So, for example, how have JFrog been working with your customers now that they've all moved to remote models? Or for the large part, a lot of people are working remotely now. So how's that affected you and how are you working with them?
So like everyone, yes, it was challenging at the beginning. But to be honest, we're very used to working remotely with customers. Yes, there were a few engagements that we used to do on site and face to face, and now we have to do it on Zoom. And it is a bit more challenging. But I think as an industry, what I feel and what I see is we adapted really quick and really well to this situation. I'm personally a face to face person, and I like it much better to meet my customers face to face and certainly meet people I work with. But to be honest, I'm surprised by how well the industry and specifically us at JFrog managed to adapt to the new situation, and we're quite successful in working with them remotely. Another effect that these changes have made is suddenly when communication is a bit more challenging and you don't have this so often face-to-face, the importance of automation and automated processes in the development lifecycle became even more important than before. So we see for a lot of organizations, this has actually accelerated their investment and their plans in adopting DevOps practices, DevSecOps practices, and automating stuff.
And I'm curious, what kind of unique challenges has this year presented for both developers and DevOps teams?
So the challenges that I see with our customers are first off communication. Teams that used to work together suddenly, they don't have this face-to-face and just turn your head and throw a comment to a friend that sits next to you and collaborate that close. So this is the first part that we see. The second part that we see is implementing complex changes. I want to change something in my infrastructure. I want to build a new project. This became very challenging for some of our customers when their first reaction was to stop many projects that required tight collaboration. But I was very happy to see that after a couple of months into this whole new reality, our customers kind of found their way. Each of them found it in a different way, by the way, but found a way to get these projects back on track. And we see customers collaborate, keep on doing their project, not stopping what's important. It changed priorities. Suddenly, some projects became much more important than others because they actually enable the more disconnected work and the more remote work. But I think, again, that as an industry, I see the industry getting back on track and managing to deal with the new reality.
And can I also ask that you tell me a little bit more about the importance of DevSecOps, especially for rapidly reacting to security threats, because there seems to be more and more occurring now, especially with so many people working from home.
We talked about DevOps during this conversation several times, and for me today, there is no difference. There is no DevOps without DevSecOps. Obviously, the terms are a bit different, but it's kind of obvious. When we're speaking about DevOps in general, and then I'll come to DevSecOps, we're actually saying, look, that the software development lifecycle is an holistic thing that should take something from an ID to something that is running in production. And it must include all the different aspects that has to do with taking software from an ID to something that runs in production. And security cannot be put aside. It must be part of it. And this is why DevSecOps is for me something that is obvious. You cannot do it any other way. So the importance of DevSecOps is, first, that's a necessity. You cannot really run DevOps without this sec part embedded into it. So the DevOps industry started without it, okay? And then what we've seen is when caught in a situation where we streamlined all the processes, we automated stuff, but then at the end of a very sophisticated process that we created for producing, distributing, and deploying software, there was this last stage before production, and then the InfoSec team would come, the CISO would come and will tell you, okay, you cannot take it into production. I have to make a review that will take me, I don't know, sometimes they will say 3 days, sometimes that they will say a month. And then whatever I've done to automate and streamline all these things, and I've created a great machine to be very efficient in how I deliver software, now it's worth nothing, because I built all of that in order to be able to frequently update my production environment, and suddenly someone tells me, okay, this all has to stop. So this is how things started. Now, what we found out is like everything that we break into small steps and we embed into the process, it's not only that it allows us to move faster, it actually also increases the quality. So not only the fact that DevSecOps is a necessity if you want to make sure that you're moving in small increments and deploying updates to production frequently. Actually, today, I believe this is the only way to stay secure. So just like breaking down the software into small increments in a counterintuitive way creates better quality, embedding the software security part into the software development lifecycle and actually breaking into smaller increments and dealing with it early in the process not only allows you to move faster, but actually promotes the quality of security, I would say, which means making your applications more secure.
And apologies for asking this because it is a pretty big question, but what is the secret to maintaining a continuous software delivery all from your home? Is there anything you can expand on there and lessons you might have learned?
So doing it on home, from home, actually, I think the secret here is taking it to the full extent in terms of automation. Okay, we see many different organizations doing wonderful things, but say, okay, I'll keep those few parts of the process as manual processes. And it's okay, it's working well for me because my team is very much aligned and they have great communication. And what we've seen is that when this new reality started and work from home, this stopped working, okay? So for me, the secret of managing this from home is standardizing on stuff and taking the automation of the software development lifecycle to the full extent and understanding that it should be fully automated end-to-end.
Before you came on the podcast today, I did do a little bit of research and I came across a few quotes from you where you recently talked about the importance of security patches and the dangers of ignoring software licenses. But can you expand on that and why it's so important? Because it's something that many people are guilty of skipping or neglecting.
Yes. So I'll explain both of these topics. So the first will be security patches. So software becomes more and more complex. And as a matter of fact, today, when we develop software, we kind of think of it of, okay, we develop code. But if you look at what's actually running in production, it's about 20% the code that you have written and 80% different libraries and infrastructure that you brought into your project. So essentially, if you look from the runtime environment, what you're running, the software you're running is 20% what you have written and 80% things that you took, mainly open source libraries, but things that are there and you took. So from the security perspective, if you look at the surface that someone can attack, actually the code you have written is 20% of it and other things are 80% of it. And not only it's 80 versus 20, the other 80 are kind of common and well known to everyone. So it's an easier surface to attack because you can just learn about existing vulnerabilities that are documented and just use them to exploit it and then attack the system. And in that sense, patching those and making sure that they do not include vulnerabilities and you have the right version to keep it secure becomes super important. Actually, if you look at the largest data breaches in the last several years, most of them were based on known vulnerabilities on third-party libraries and not on 0 days and stuff like that. So So patching is super important and challenging. It's challenging because this composition of 80-20 that I mentioned implies that the amount of different libraries that the developers are bringing into the projects is huge. And one of the challenges for keeping patches and security to that is a lot of these organizations don't really know or control what's in there. So I'm running software. I know I probably know the operating system I'm using. I'm very much familiar with the code that I've written, but getting familiar with what's actually there, all your direct dependencies and what we call transitive dependencies, the dependencies of these dependencies, these are hundreds and thousands of libraries that are there. Some of them has vulnerabilities, and I must have a very good way of understanding what's the content that is there, and also having a very good policy of updating and patching this content. Otherwise, I have vulnerabilities running in my runtime. So this is super important, this to answer the vulnerability part. If I want to address the licenses part, then there's a lot of commonality between what I just said with security to what's going on with licenses.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you're using third-party libraries, each of them has different licenses, which can be very confusing, mainly to developers. And if I don't have a good control and understanding of what is the content of these libraries and what libraries I'm using, so obviously I cannot control what licenses I'm using, and I do not know if I actually comply to the policy of our organization or not. And we actually see customers that are getting fined for using libraries that they didn't even know they use, but that the license is used against the policy of the license, so they did not comply. So obviously this is very important, and to achieve this, you need to have two things: a very good control of what's running in your runtime, which is essentially binaries, and very good understanding of the vulnerabilities and licenses that are part of this environment.
And like I said at the very beginning of the podcast, you have been on quite a journey, and you talked about how you started out as a developer. But I think it's incredibly important to highlight as well that JFrog was recently listed on NASDAQ. So can you tell me more about that journey and what this means to you?
So obviously it's super exciting, and it's a major milestone, I think, for any company that is going public at some point. So we celebrated that, and for us it made us very, very proud, and a lot of the things that we knew that we do and were proud of became more visible to others. But to be honest, it did not change a lot. As JFrog, we have our vision. We call it liquid software. What we try to do is we believe that software should run just like water in pipes, software updates. So it means we want our customers to have a flawless experience of moving updates from development to production. That's our vision, and this is what we want to achieve. So the fact that we became a public company, okay, that's a great milestone and a great excitement, but it doesn't change our vision. It doesn't change the way we work. So the day after the celebrations, we woke up and came to work with the same mission, the same goals, and the same practices and culture. The main thing that changed is that there are more eyes on us now, which is good. We're happy about that, but it did not change anything beyond that.
And this year has been an incredibly turbulent year, but you have been able to enjoy success. But if we continue to look forward, what excites you about life in 2021? Is there anything else you can share with us today about that road ahead?
So there are two things or two vectors of excitement, of changes that create excitement for me. And I really want to see how this kind of play out during 2021 and after. One of them is the new reality that we discussed several times in this conversation. this whole work from home and new reality, and what does this mean for software development and software development lifecycle and automation. And as I stated already, one of the good things that came out of that is that even more organizations are convinced that fully automating these processes is a necessity. So this is one thing. I'm really curious and excited to see how this plays out and what these changes bring with it. And the other thing is more internal to JFrog, and it's where we go. So I mentioned our vision and the changes that are happening. So we see new advancement in the IoT world, and we see more and more computers and more software that is running on different types of devices, either on the premises of our customers, data centers, or clouds, which are more common. But we see more and more software running on edges. These edges can be sometimes a car, sometimes it's a device in your smart home, or an IoT device in some kind of factory, and sometimes it's a point of sale in a retailer. But we see software keep on expanding, and we see this notion of DevOps, continuous updates, and what we call liquid software getting further into this domain. We see cars being updated. For example, we see software updates on airplanes, and I'm very excited to see the action that we are taking at JFrog in enabling this flawless movement of binaries from development to production, while these production environments become more and more complex and more towards the edge. I think there are very exciting things that we're going to see in the coming years on that domain.
Well, I'm conscious we've covered a lot of ground today. So for anyone listening that would like to continue to follow your journey, what's the best way of finding JFrog online, and equally contacting your team if anybody wants to reach out and carry on that conversation we started today?
Sure. So obviously you can log into our website at jfrog.com. Okay, you will find a lot of content there, a lot of webinars and white papers and interesting things that we do. And I think the best way to start and experience our platform is just to try it. So we have different types of trials that you can use, including a free tier that you can just log in and have a SaaS setup that is all for you, and you can start experimenting with that. These are probably the best ways to follow us and experience what we do. That's it, I think.
Excellent. Well, I'll have those links to the blog post that will accompany this episode, just so people can find you nice and easily. But I'd love chatting with you today. Love hearing about your story from being a developer to going public with JFrog, and also learning more about that security mindset within every stage of a software development and development life cycle. Incredibly valuable, and more than anything, just thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Neil.
So many things I loved about Gal's personal story there. And I think the big message that he's left us all with is that ignore software licenses at your peril. And the fact that 80% of software is built using open source components, yet many developers still fail to understand the rules before embedding it within their software, is a bit of an eye-opener for me. And even as security becomes embedded within DevOps platforms and development processes under the umbrella of DevSecOps, many organizations are still failing to embed a security mindset within all stages of the software development and development lifecycle. Food for thought indeed, but if this is your world that you frequent, if you see those kind of mistakes, how do you get around them? How do you embed that security mindset within your organization? Whatever it is you would like to comment on, please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can also find me on my website, techblogwriter.co.uk, where you'll find links to all my social channels, over 1,400 podcast interviews now, not to mention shameless plug for my other two tech podcasts, Switched On Thinking by Netgear and Tech Fusion by Citrix. But I've rambled on enough for one day. So a genuine thank you from me for tuning into this podcast. Genuinely appreciate each and every one of you. So thanks for sticking around for the last 5 years and making this show what it is. And I do hope that you join me again tomorrow. But if you don't, well, until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.